The hospital room was a sterile cage of white walls and blinking lights, where time seemed to hang suspended, heavy as the antiseptic air. A millionaire's daughter lay in a coma for days, her small body tethered to machines that hummed with indifferent precision. Doctors shook their heads. Specialists jetted in from across the globe, their briefcases stuffed with credentials but empty of answers. Nothing worked. Then, a barefoot boy, no older than 11, walked into the ward and whispered 5 words that turned the world upside down. "I can wake her up." The millionaire scoffed, his laughter sharp as broken glass. But what happened next wasn't just a story. It was a miracle, one that would unravel everything he thought he knew. You won't believe how it ends. The clock on the wall blinked. 12:32 p.m., its red digits pulsing like a heartbeat trapped in a machine. The room smelled of bleach and plastic, a sterile perfume that clung to the skin. Monitors flanked the bed, their screens graphing lines that rose and fell on a dull, predictable rhythm, not urgent, not hopeful, just routine. In the center of it all lay Sophie Carter, 9 years old, her frail frame barely denting the crisp hospital sheets. A pink blanket, dotted with cartoon balloons, draped over her like a fuel shield against the cold reality of the ICU. Her eyes were shut tight, her face pale as moonlight, her dark curls splayed across the pillow like ink spilled on snow. Tubes snaked around her arms, her chest, her nose, binding her to life with the tenacity of vines clinging to a crumbling wall. She hadn't spoken, hadn't moved, hadn't opened her eyes in 8 days. It had happened so fast. One moment, Sophie was giggling over her cereal at the breakfast table, her laughter bright as the morning sun filtering through the kitchen blinds. The next, she was tying her sneakers for school, her fingers fumbling with the laces, when her body crumpled to the floor like a marionette with its strings cut. Michael Carter, her father, had been halfway out the door, his work boots still caked with construction site mud, when the school nurse's call shattered his world. Acute autoimmune encephalitis, the doctors later said, a rare inflammation of the brain that struck without warning, locking Sophie in a silent prison. The top pediatric neurologists, flown in from Boston and London, could only offer shrugs and jargon. "She might wake up," one said, his voice clinical, detached. "Or she might not," another added, almost as an afterthought. Their words landed like stones in Michael's chest. Michael sat by Sophie's side, his calloused hands dwarfing her small, limp one. A construction worker by trade, he had built bridges across rivers, hoisted steel beams with cranes, poured concrete into the earth's bones. But nothing had ever felt heavier than this, watching his little girl slip away, her breath so faint it barely stirred the air. The nurses called it devotion. The doctors called it desperation. Michael didn't care what they called it. This was his Sophie, his only child, the girl who loved stories about the moon and drew stars on every scrap of paper she could find. He wasn't leaving her side, not for anything. But time was a relentless thief. 8 days in, the doctors' voices dropped to whispers, their conversations shifting from treatment to next steps. Hospital policy, insurance limits, and the phrase quality of life began to creep into the room like unwanted guests. Michael's hope, once a roaring fire, was now a flickering ember, threatened by every passing hour. He rubbed his thumb over Sophie's knuckles, tracing the delicate bones, and murmured the same prayer he'd repeated since the first night. "Come back to me, baby girl. Please." That Thursday afternoon, the door swung open, and Victor Grayson strode in, unannounced, his presence as commanding as the tailored suit he wore. Grayson was a billionaire tech mogul, owner of half the hospitals in the state, and a man who wore his wealth like a second skin. His private security flanked him, their earpieces glinting, while a PR team hovered in the background, tablets in hand, ready to spin this moment into a headline. Grayson had read about Sophie in a local paper while sipping his imported espresso at a penthouse breakfast. He saw an opportunity, not just to help, but to be seen helping. "Mr. Carter," Grayson said, his voice smooth as polished marble, "I'm here to offer you a miracle." He gestured to the entourage behind him, specialists from Switzerland. High-powered diagnostic machines, experimental drugs not yet approved by the FDA, all at no cost. He added, his smile gleaming with the confidence of a man who could buy hope itself. Michael, worn down by sleepless nights and endless bad news, looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "Will it bring her back?" he asked, his voice raw. Grayson chuckled, the sound sharp and hollow, echoing off the sterile walls. "My friend, we'll upgrade her brain like it's the latest smartphone. Trust me, I know how to make your daughter wake up." The words landed like a slap. Michael's jaw tightened, his fingers curling into Sophie's blanket. "She's not a machine," he said, his voice low, steady, but laced with fire. "She's my little girl." Grayson waved a dismissive hand, his designer sunglasses catching the fluorescent light. "Emotion makes you weak, Carter. Science wins." He turned to his team, barking orders about neural scans and data uploads, as if Sophie were a project to be debugged. Michael watched, his heart a tangled knot of gratitude and resentment. He wanted to believe Grayson's promises, wanted to cling to the hope of machines and experts, but something about the man's arrogance gnawed at him. Science hadn't saved his wife, Sarah, 3 years ago when a drunk driver stole her from them. Could it save Sophie now? The specialist said. To work, their machines humming louder, their screens flashing with graphs and numbers. Michael stayed rooted by Sophie's bed, reading her favorite book, a worn copy of The Girl Who Spoke to the Moon, even though her eyes didn't flutter, her fingers didn't twitch. The nurses, led by Mary Thompson, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a voice soft as a lullaby, brought him coffee and gentle words. "She hears you," Mary said one night, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "I've seen it before, kids like Sophie. They're listening, even when it looks like they're gone." Michael nodded, wanting to believe her, but the weight of the unknown pressed harder with every beep of the monitor dot. By the end of the week, Grayson's team had run every test, hooked Sophie to every machine, injected every drug. Nothing changed. Her face remained still, her breath a fragile thread. The specialists began to pack their bags, their faces tight with the quiet shame of failure. Grayson's visits grew shorter, his promises thinner, until he stopped coming altogether, leaving only invoices and a lingering sense of betrayal. Michael didn't care about the money. He'd sell everything he owned for one more of Sophie's smiles, but the betrayal stung. He'd let himself hope, and hope had betrayed him before dawn as the sun dipped below the horizon. Painting the hospital room in shades of gray, Michael leaned close to Sophie, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm here, baby girl. I'm not going anywhere." The machines beeped on, indifferent. Outside, the city buzzed with life cars honking, streetlights flickering on. But in room 317, time stood still, and hope felt like a fragile thing, slipping through Michael's fingers like sand. The hospital room felt smaller with each passing day, its white walls closing in like a tomb. Sophie Carter lay unchanged, her small chest rising and falling beneath the balloon-dotted blanket, a fragile rhythm dictated by machines. 9 days had bled into one another, each marked by the same sterile hum, the same empty promises. Michael Carter sat hunched by her bed, his work-roughened hands cradling the dog-eared copy of The Girl Who Spoke to the Moon. He read aloud, his voice hoarse, as if the words could pull his daughter back from wherever she'd gone. But Sophie's eyes remained closed, her face a pale mask, and the monitors beeped on, indifferent to his pleas. The specialists Victor Grayson had flown in were gone now, their sleek laptops and murmured apologies packed away, their machines with their blinking lights and endless data, had failed to stir Sophie from her coma. Grayson's miracle package had crumbled into invoices and excuses, leaving Michael with a bitter taste of betrayal. The billionaire's visits had dwindled, his slick assurances replaced by phone calls from his PR team, hinting at reallocating resources. Dr. Richard Hayes, the lead neurologist, spoke in clipped tones about long-term care options, his eyes avoiding Michael's. The words hung heavy. Palliative care, insurance caps, letting go. Michael refused to listen. He wasn't giving up on Sophie, not when she was still breathing, still here, even if only in the faintest sense. Why, Mary Thompson was the only one who didn't talk in ultimatums. She moved through the ICU with a quiet grace, her middle-aged face lined with years of seeing life and death dance too close. She brought Michael coffee in paper cups, her hands lingering as she passed them over, as if offering warmth beyond the drink. "She's still in there, Mr. Carter," Mary said one evening, adjusting Sophie's IV line with a gentleness that felt like a prayer. "I've seen kids like her. Sometimes they just need a reason to come back." Michael nodded, his throat too tight to reply, but her words felt like grasping at shadows. What reason could he give Sophie when he'd failed her so many times before? It was just past midnight on the 9th day when Mary tapped on the glass door of room 317. Michael looked up, startled, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion. "Mr. Carter," she whispered, her voice low but urgent. "There's someone here." "A boy. Says he wants to help." "A boy?" Michael frowned, setting the book on Sophie's blanket. "What boy?" Mary gestured toward the hallway, her expression a mix of curiosity and caution. "He's in the lobby. You should see him yourself." Michael stepped out, his work boots heavy on the polished floor. The hospital was eerily quiet at this hour, the fluorescent lights casting long shadows. In the lobby, on a cold plastic bench, sat a child no older than 11. He was black, barefoot, his oversized gray hoodie frayed at the sleeves, his jeans torn at the knees. Dirt smudged his cheeks, but his eyes, deep, clear, and impossibly still caught Michael's breath like a hook in his chest. The boy stood as Michael approached, nodding with a respect that felt older than his years. "Are you Sophie's father?" the boy asked, his voice soft but steady. "Yes," Michael said, hesitating. "Who are you?" The boy didn't answer the question. Instead, he said, "I know how to help her." Michael blinked, the words landing like a pebble in still water. "What did you say?" "I know how to wake her up." The boy's tone wasn't loud, wasn't boastful, wasn't even hopeful. It was certain, as if he'd seen the outcome already. Michael, sleep-deprived and raw with grief, let out a tired sigh. "Kid, look, I appreciate you trying, but—" He rubbed his face, the stubble scratching his palm. "Doctors couldn't help her. A billionaire with all his fancy tech couldn't help her. I don't think—" "She's not lost," the boy said, cutting through Michael's words like a blade. "She's listening from far away, but she doesn't know if it's safe to come back." Michael's mouth went dry. The boy stepped closer, his bare feet silent on the tile. "She needs something this hospital doesn't have." His eyes walked onto Michael's, unyielding. "She needs your pain, your truth, the words you've kept buried under all that strength." Michael froze, the boy's words slicing into a part of him he'd locked away. Who was this kid? How did he know Sophie's name? Know anything about her? Every instinct told Michael to dismiss him, to call security and send the boy back to wherever he'd come from. But something deeper and ache older than reason held him still. "Can I sit with her?" the boy asked. Michael's mind raced. He glanced at Mary, who stood by the nurse's station, her hands clasped, watching with quiet intensity. Against his better judgment, he nodded. "All right," he whispered. "But just for a minute." The boy followed Michael into room 317, his presence oddly weightless, like a breeze slipping through a cracked window. He stood beside Sophie's bed, his small hand hovering over her forehead, not touching but close enough to make the air feel charged. His lips moved silently, as if speaking to someone beyond the room's walls. Then he turned to Michael, his eyes piercing. "Now you. She knows you're here, but she needs to know why you're still here." Michael stared at his daughter, his heart a clenched fist. The boy's words echoed, pulling at memories he'd buried since Sarah's death 3 years ago. He'd been at work that morning when Sophie collapsed, just like he'd been at work too many mornings, too many evenings, trying to outrun the grief that clung to him like damp earth. He'd missed her smiles, her stories, the way she'd ask him to tell her about the moon. He'd failed her, and the weight of it crushed him. "I wasn't there." "Sophie," he whispered, his voice cracking like dry wood. "I was at work. I missed your breakfast. I missed your laugh. I should have seen something was wrong." Tears burned his eyes, spilling onto the blanket. "I should have held you longer that morning. I should have told you how proud I am, how much I love you." He gripped her hand, trembling. "Please, baby girl, come back. I'll never miss another second, I swear." Silence swallowed the room. Then, a single blip broke the rhythm of the heart monitor faster just once. Mary, standing by the door, gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. Michael's head snapped up. "Did you see that?" "I did," the boy said calmly. "She's listening." Before Michael could speak, the boy turned to leave, his bare feet making no sound. "Wait," Michael called, lurching forward. "What's your name?" The boy paused, hand on the doorframe. "They call me Noah," he said, his voice soft as a whisper of wind. "I'll be back tomorrow." He stepped into the hallway and was gone, as if the shadows had claimed him. Michael turned back to Sophie, her face still pale but her fingers warmer, or so he thought. He sank into the chair, his heart pounding. Mary checked the monitor, her brow furrowed. "That was unusual," she murmured, then glanced at the door. "I'll check the visitor log. No kids should be here this late." She returned minutes later, her face pale. "Mr. Carter, there's no record of anyone signing in. And the security cameras," she hesitated. "They show you walking alone to the lobby and back." Michael said nothing, his eyes fixed on Sophie's blanket, rising and falling with her breath. He didn't care about cameras or logs. Noah had been real. The boy's words, his presence, had shifted something in the room, not just in Sophie, but in Michael himself. For the first time in 9 days, hope wasn't a flicker. It was a flame. The hospital room was no longer just a room. It was a battlefield where hope and despair clashed in silence. Sophie Carter lay still, her small frame a fragile anchor in the storm of Michael Carter's heart. 10 days had passed since her collapse, and though her fingers had twitched once, under the strange influence of a barefoot boy named Noah, Michael clung to that moment like a lifeline. He sat by her bed, his voice raw from reading The Girl Who Spoke to the Moon, his eyes scanning her face for another sign, another flicker. The heart monitor beeped its steady, unyielding rhythm, and the pink balloon-dotted blanket rose and fell. A faint reminder that Sophie was still fighting. Even if no one could see it, Noah's visit the night before had left a crack in Michael's despair, a sliver of light he couldn't explain. The boy's words, "She's listening from far away," echoed in his mind, as did the single blip of Sophie's heart monitor, a fleeting pulse of hope. But doubt crept in with the morning light, sharp and cold. Had he imagined it? Was Noah just a kid with a knack for saying the right thing at the right time? Michael rubbed his temples, the weight of exhaustion pressing against his skull. He wanted to believe, but belief felt like stepping onto thin ice, and he'd fallen through too many times before. Why'd have Mary Thompson slipped into the room with a fresh cup of coffee? her kind eyes scanning Michael's slumped form. "You didn't sleep, did you?" she asked, setting the cup on the table. Michael shook his head, managing a tired smile. Mary had become his tether to sanity, a quiet faith, a contrast to the clinical detachment of Dr. Richard Hayes, who dismissed Noah's visit as delusion born of stress. Mary leaned closer, checking Sophie's IV. "That boy, Noah," she said softly. "He was real, wasn't he?" "I saw him too." Michael nodded, his throat tight. "He was here, but the cameras didn't catch him. You checked." Mary frowned, her fingers pausing on the IV line. "I don't know how to explain it, Mr. Carter, but I've worked in this ICU for 20 years. Sometimes things happen that don't make it on the charts or cameras." Her voice carried a weight, a story she wasn't telling, and Michael wondered what losses she'd seen in those 20 years to make her believe. In the unexplainable, the door swung open and Victor Grayson strode in, his polished shoes clicking like a metronome. His suit was crisp, his sunglasses perched on his head, but his smile was thinner than before, edged with irritation. Behind him, a PR assistant clutched a tablet, typing furiously. "Carter," Grayson said, his tone clipped. "We need to talk." Michael stiffened, his hand tightening on Sophie's. "What now?" Grayson gestured to the monitors, their graphs unchanged despite his team's efforts. "My specialist did everything possible. Top-tier diagnostics, experimental protocols, nothing worked. It's time to face reality." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "The hospital has policies. Insurance won't cover indefinite ICU stays. You need to consider long-term care. Or—" He trailed off, but the unspoken words hung heavy. "Letting go." Michael's jaw clenched. "She's not a machine you can unplug when your tech fails, Grayson. She's my daughter." Grayson's eyes narrowed, his patience fraying. "And I'm trying to help you, Carter. But clinging to fairy tales about some barefoot kid isn't going to change her prognosis." He'd heard the whispers among the staff talk of Noah, the boy who'd slipped past security, who'd made Sophie's heart monitor blip. It was bad PR, a stain on his reputation as the man who could solve anything with money and science. "You're wasting time," Grayson added. "And mine." Mary stepped forward, her voice firm but calm. "Mr. Grayson, with all due respect, this is Mr. Carter's decision, not yours." Grayson shot her a look that could have frozen water, but she held her ground, her hands clasped tightly. Michael stood, his broad frame towering over Grayson's sleek confidence. "You promised me a miracle," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Where is it?" Grayson opened his mouth, but no words came. He turned on his heel, muttering to his assistant about reassessing funding, and left the room, the door clicking shut like a verdict. That afternoon, Michael's mind drifted to memories he'd tried to bury. 3 years ago, after Sarah's death in a car accident, he'd thrown himself into work-endless shifts at construction sites, pouring concrete, building walls to keep the grief at bay. Sophie had noticed, of course. She'd stopped asking for bedtime stories, stopped begging him to sing the lullaby Sarah used to hum, light in the shadows. Instead, she'd filled notebooks with drawings of the moon, of stars, of a world where things didn't break. He'd failed to see her quiet pain, and now, with her lying motionless, that failure was a knife in his gut. He opened Sophie's book again, his voice trembling as he read about the girl who whispered to the moon for courage. The words felt hollow, but he kept going, hoping they reached her wherever she was. Mary lingered by the door, her shift ending, but she hesitated. "Mr. Carter," she said, "keep talking to her. I lost my son years ago, and I wish I'd said more when I had the chance." Her voice cracked, and she left before Michael could respond, her confession hanging in the air like a ghost. Hours later, as rain began to tap against the hospital windows, the door creaked open. Noah stood there, his frayed hoodie damp, a stale half loaf of bread tucked under his arm. His barefoot presence was as startling as the night before, his eyes still carrying that unnerving calm. "I said I'd come back," he said, offering Michael a piece of the bread. Michael took it, more out of reflex than hunger. "Who are you, Noah? Really?" Noah shrugged, sitting cross-legged on the floor by Sophie's bed. "Someone who knows what it's like to be lost." He looked at Sophie, his hand hovering near her wrist. "She's closer today, but she's scared. She needs the song." Michael frowned. "Song?" "The one you stopped singing," Noah said, his voice soft, but insistent. "The one she remembers from before everything got quiet." Michael's breath caught. Light in the shadows, the lullaby Sarah had sung, the one he'd buried with her memory. He hadn't sung it in years, not since the funeral when his voice broke and he swore never to sing again. I can't," he stammered. "You can," Noah said, his eyes locking onto Michael's. "She's waiting for it." Michael's hand shook as he cleared his throat. The first notes were ragged, barely audible. "There's light in the shadows and stars in the rain." He faltered, but Noah nodded, urging him on. "Hold on, my little dreamer, you'll fly once again." The monitor blipped, faster this time, and Sophie's fingers curled slightly, like a flower reaching for light. Mary, back for a late shift, froze in the doorway, her eyes wide. "My God," she whispered. Noah stood, brushing crumbs from his. "James, keep singing," he said. "She's finding her way." He slipped out, leaving Michael staring at Sophie's hand, the faint curl of her fingers a miracle in itself. The next morning, Dr. Hayes stormed into the room, his clipboard clutched like a shield. "Mr. Carter, this talk about a boy is getting out of hand. The staff are distracted, and it's affecting patient care." He adjusted his glasses, his voice sharp. "There's no evidence anyone was here. No visitor log, no footage. You're under stress, and it's understandable. But he was here," Michael said, his voice steady. Sophie moved. "You saw the monitor." Hayes sighed, flipping through his notes. "A reflex, nothing more. Her condition hasn't changed." But his eyes flickered with doubt, and Michael caught it. Mary, overhearing, pulled Michael aside later. "I heard something from a janitor," she whispered. "Kids like Noah, they hang out in the old train yard by the river. Kids no one looks for." Her words lit a spark in Michael. If Noah was real, if he was out there, Michael needed to find him, to understand why he knew Sophie, why he cared. But as Michael prepared to leave, Grayson's assistant delivered a message. The hospital was cutting Sophie's funding unless Michael agreed to transfer her to a care facility by week's end. The ultimatum hit like a punch. Michael looked at Sophie, her small hands still curled, and made a choice. He'd find Noah, and he'd keep singing, no matter what Grayson or Hayes said, because for the first time in 10 days, he believed Sophie could hear him. The rain came down in sheets, a relentless curtain that turned the hospital parking lot into a shimmering blur. Inside room 317, the air was thick with the sterile sting of antiseptic and the weight of unspoken fears. Sophie Carter, 11 days. Into her coma, lay motionless under her balloon-dotted blanket, her face pale as a waning moon. The heart monitor's steady beep had become Michael Carter's lifeline, each pulse a fragile thread tying his daughter to the world. But that morning, the thread began to fray. Michael hadn't left Sophie's side since Noah's second visit, when her fingers curled to the tune of Light in the Shadows. The memory of that moment burned in his chest, a spark of hope he refused to let die. He'd sung the lullaby again and again, his voice cracking but resolute, reading from The Girl Who Spoke to the Moon until the pages blurred. Why Mary Thompson had stayed late, her quiet presence a balm against the storm brewing inside him. But Dr. Richard Hayes, with his clipped voice and skeptical eyes, delivered the blow at dawn. Sophie's vitals were slipping. Her heart rate was erratic, her blood pressure dropping. "We're doing everything we can," Hayes said, his tone professional but hollow. "But you need to prepare for the worst." Michael's world tilted. "The worst?" he whispered, his hands gripping Sophie's bedrail. "She moved yesterday. She heard me." Hayes adjusted his glasses, his expression unyielding. "Reflexes, Mr. Carter. The brain can fire random signals under stress. It doesn't mean she's waking up." He hesitated, then added, "We may need to discuss end-of-life options." The words landed like a sledgehammer. Michael's vision narrowed, the room shrinking to the sound of Sophie's monitor and the faint rise of her chest. He shook his head, his voice a growl. "No, she's still here. I'm not giving up." Before Hayes could respond, Victor Grayson swept into the room, his tailored coat dripping from the rain. His usual polish was frayed, his jaw tight with frustration. "Carter," he said, dismissing Hayes with a glance, "this has gone long enough. My team's done everything GI. Eye diagnostics, neural stimulators, drugs not even on the market. It's over." He pulled a document from his briefcase, sliding it across the table. "Sign this. It authorizes Sophie's transfer to a long-term facility. It's the humane thing to do." Michael stared at the paper, its clinical language. A betrayal of everything he felt. "Humane?" he spat, shoving it back. "You think I'll let you unplug my daughter because your machines failed?" Grayson's eyes narrowed, his voice cold. "You're clinging to a ghost story about some street kid. It's pathetic. Sign. The paper or the hospital pulls funding. You'll be out on the street with her." Mary stepped forward, her face flushed with rare anger. "Mr. Grayson, this is a family's decision, not a business deal. Leave them be." Grayson shot her a venomous look but said nothing, storming out with his assistant scrambling behind. Michael turned back to Sophie, his heart pounding. Noah's words echoed. "She's scared. She needs the song." He couldn't sign that paper. Not when Sophie had moved, not when Noah had promised she was listening. But Hayes' warning and Grayson's ultimatum gnawed at him, planting seeds of doubt. Was he chasing a delusion? Was Sophie really gone? The rain hadn't stopped when Michael left the hospital, his work jacket soaked as he drove to the old train yard by the river. Mary's tip about Noah lingered like a beacon. If the boy was real, if he knew something, anything Michael had, to find him. The train yard was a forgotten place, its rusted tracks swallowed by weeds, its abandoned cars home to kids no one looked for. Michael parked under a flickering street lamp, the rain drumming on his hood, and stepped into the mud. The air smelled of damp metal and decay. Shadows moved in the distance, kids, maybe, or ghosts of a city that had turned its back. Michael called out, "Noah." His voice was swallowed by the storm. He pushed deeper, past graffiti-covered boxcars, until he spotted a figure under a sagging awning. Noah sat cross-legged, his barefoot silhouette unmistakable, a harmonica pressed to his lips. The notes were soft, haunting, like a melody from another world. "Noah," Michael said, his voice urgent. "I need you." "Sophie, she's getting worse." Noah lowered the harmonica, his eyes meeting Michael's through the rain. "I know," he said, calm as ever. "She's scared, Mr. Carter. She's caught in the dark, and the machines can't reach her." Michael's fists clenched. "Then tell me what to do. Grayson's pushing me to give up. The doctors say she's slipping. I can't lose her." Noah stood, his hoodie clinging to his thin frame. "You're not losing her, but she needs more than your voice now. She needs the stories you stopped telling, the ones you buried when you buried her mom." His words cut deep, and Michael staggered back, memories flooding in. Sarah's laugh, Sophie's drawings, the nights he'd worked late to avoid their empty house. "How do you know about Sarah?" Michael demanded, Noah's eyes softened, but he didn't answer directly. I was in a bed like Sophie's once, alone. No one sang to me. No one told me stories. I waited, but no one came. He paused, his voice barely audible over the rain. I promised I'd never let another kid wait like that. Michael's throat tightened. Noah was real, not a ghost, not an angel, but a boy with scars of his own. Come back with me, Michael said. Help her. Noah nodded, tucking the harmonica into his pocket. I'll come. But it's your voice she needs, not mine. Back at the hospital, the air was heavier, the monitors louder. Sophie's vitals had plummeted further, her heart rate a stuttering whisper. Hayes stood by her bed, his face grim, preparing to call a code. Mary hovered nearby, her eyes red but resolute. Michael burst in, Noah trailing behind, his bare feet silent on the tile. Hayes spun around, his voice sharp. Who is this? Number. Visitors without clearance. He's with me, Michael snapped, guiding Noah to Sophie's side. The boy placed a hand on her wrist, his lips moving silently, as if whispering to someone beyond the room. Then he turned to Michael. Tell her the story. The one about the moon. And sing. She's closer than you think. Michael's hands shook as he pulled a chair close, his old notebook filled with stories he'd written for Sophie before Sarah's death clutched like a talisman. He opened it. The pages yellowed, the ink smudged. Once, he began, his voice trembling. There was a girl who whispered to the moon, asking for courage to face the dark. He faltered, tears blurring his vision, but Noah's steady gaze urged him on. He sang, There's light in the shadows and stars in the rain. The monitor blipped, erratic at first, then steadier. Sophie's fingers twitched, stronger. This time, her chest rising with a deeper breath. Mary gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Hayes stared, his clipboard forgotten, as the numbers on the screen climbed. Michael's voice broke, but he kept singing, the lullaby weaving through the room like a lifeline. Grayson burst in, his face a mask of fury. What is this nonsense? He demanded, glaring at Noah. Get this kid out before I call security. Mary stepped between them, her voice fierce. Leave, Mr. Grayson. You've done enough. Grayson hesitated, unused to defiance, then stormed out, muttering about lawsuits. Noah stepped back, his eyes on Sophie. She's found the light, he whispered, slipping a folded note into Michael's hand. Keep singing. He moved toward the door, and Michael called after him, but Noah was gone, swallowed by the hallway shadows. Michael unfolded the note, his hands trembling. Sometimes the healing comes before the waking. She hears you. He turned to Sophie, her eyelids fluttering, and then a miracle, she whispered, Daddy. Her voice was faint, a thread of sound, but it shattered Michael's world. He fell to his knees, sobbing into her blanket as Mary rushed to check her vitals. Hayes, stunned, muttered, This shouldn't be possible. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle, and Michael felt something shift, not just in Sophie, but in the universe itself. Noah had been there, and Sophie had heard him. The hospital room, once a cage of sterile despair, now hummed with a quiet warmth, as if the air itself had softened. Sophie Carter's eyes, open for the first time in 11 days, fluttered like moth wings, catching the morning light. Her whisper of Daddy still echoed in Michael Carter's heart, a sound more powerful than any machine in room 317. The pink balloon-dotted blanket lay folded at her feet, no longer a shield, but a reminder of the girl who'd fought her way back from the dark. The monitors, still tethered to her small frame, beeped with a steadier rhythm, their graphs climbing like a promise. But Sophie was far from whole. Her hands trembled when she tried to lift them. Her voice was a fragile thread, and her legs, once quick to chase fireflies, refused to carry her. Yet she was awake, and for Michael, that was enough. Michael sat by her bed, his work-roughened hands gentle as he brushed a curl from her forehead. "You scared me, baby girl," he said, his voice thick with relief and exhaustion. Sophie managed a faint smile, her eyes searching his. "I heard you," she whispered. "You and the boy." Michael's breath caught. "Noah?" She nodded, her fingers clutching the edge of the blanket. "He sang to me, in the dark. Said you were waiting." Her words were slow, each one. A labor, but they carried a weight that made Michael's chest ache. He thought of Noah's note, tucked in his pocket like a talisman. Sometimes the healing comes before the waking. "She hears you." Wida Murray Thompson checked Sophie's chart, her eyes bright with something like awe. "Her vitals are stabilizing," she said, glancing at Michael. "It's not a full recovery yet, but it's remarkable." Dr. Richard Hayes, hovering near the door, said nothing, his skepticism softened by the undeniable. Sophie was awake, against all odds. He muttered about spontaneous neural recovery and retreated to his office, unable to meet Michael's gaze. Sophie's recovery was a slow dance, each step forward shadowed by setbacks. Physical therapy began the next day, her small body trembling as she tried to grip a crayon or lift her head. Michael was there for every session, cheering her on, his voice steady even when his heart faltered. Sophie spoke of Noah often, describing his laugh like sunlight, his hands smelling of dust and bread. "He told me stories," she said one afternoon, her crayon tracing a wobbly moon on a sketch pad, about a boy who carried stars in his pocket. Michael listened, his throat tight, wondering how a child like Noah could know Sophie's heart so well. Outside the hospital, the world began to notice. A nurse had leaked the story of Sophie's awakening, and local reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing as they pressed Michael for details. "Was it the billionaire's tech?" they asked. "The doctors? The boy?" Michael shook his head, his voice firm. It was Noah and Sophie's strength, and maybe something bigger. The headlines called it a miracle, but Victor Grayson, furious at being sidelined, issued a press release claiming his technology had laid the groundwork. Michael ignored him, his focus on Sophie's slow steps and the notebook he now carried everywhere, filled with stories and songs he'd stopped telling after Sarah's death. Inspired by Noah, Michael made a decision that surprised even himself. He sold his old pickup truck, then the small cabin his parents had left him, using the money to fund a dream born in room 317. He called it Dawn's Song, a free art and music center for children in the city's poorest neighborhood's kids. Like Noah, who wandered train yards with no one to sing to them. Mary signed on as a volunteer, her own grief over her lost son fueling her passion. "This is what Sophie would want," she told Michael, her hands busy sorting donated paintbrushes. "A place where kids aren't forgotten." Sophie, still in therapy, drew a mural for the center's wall. A boy with bare feet and a too-big hoodie, his hand outstretched, offering a glowing star. Underneath, in shaky blue letters, she wrote, "He didn't need wings. He had faith." Michael framed the drawing, hanging it in his apartment, a reminder of the boy who changed everything. The story of Sophie and Noah spread beyond the hospital, carried by whispers and news reports. Michael and Sophie recorded a video one evening, Sophie's voice soft but clear as she told her story, her drawing spread across the hospital bed. Michael sang Light in the Shadows, his voice raw but steady, and they uploaded it to a YouTube channel called Noah's Echo. Within days, it had thousands of views, then millions. Messages poured in from ICU families, foster kids, lonely college students, even a prisoner who wrote, "I thought I was lost, but your song made me think I'm not finished yet." Each note felt like a ripple, spreading Noah's light further than Michael could have imagined. Victor Grayson tried to capitalize on the attention, offering to fund Dawn's Song in exchange for naming rights. Michael refused, his voice calm but unyielding. "This isn't yours to claim," he told Grayson's assistant over the phone. "It's for the kids who need it, not your headlines." Grayson's threats of legal action faded as public support grew, his influence no match for a story that had taken on a life of its own. One evening, Michael and Sophie walked through their old neighborhood, a maze of cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. Sophie wore purple rain boots. "Just in case," she said, her eyes bright despite her unsteady steps. They stopped at the corner near the closed-down train station, where an old man played a harmonica under a broken street lamp. A cardboard sign at his feet read, "You're not lost. You're just not finished yet." Sophie gasped, tugging Michael's sleeve. "Daddy, look!" Michael's heart skipped. He approached the man, whose grizzled beard and calloused fingers spoke of a hard life. "Where'd you get that phrase?" Michael asked, his voice low. The man smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Heard it from a kid years back. Played music with me till he up and vanished. Called himself Noah, I think." Sophie grinned, her boots splashing in a puddle. "He's still out there, Daddy." Michael nodded, a warmth blooming in his chest. "Yeah, I think he is." That night, Sophie stood by her bedroom window, clutching a stuffed giraffe, her eyes fixed on the moon. "What if Noah finds another kid who's lost?" she asked, her voice small but fierce. "What if they're scared like I was?" Michael brushed her hair back, his heart full. "Then I hope someone's singing nearby. And we'll keep singing, too, okay?" Sophie nodded, solemn as a vow. "We should teach the world to sing, like Noah did." Michael hugged her close, his eyes stinging. "We will, baby girl, we will." The air in the Dawn Song Community Center was alive with laughter and the hum of anticipation, a stark contrast to the sterile silence of room 317 a year ago. On the one-year anniversary of Sophie Carter's awakening, the small stage was adorned with paper stars and balloons, a nod to the blanket that had once been her shield. Sophie, now 10, stood at the edge of the platform, her purple rain boots scuffed but shiny, her hands clutching a microphone. Her legs still trembled from the months of therapy, her movements careful, but her eyes sparkled with a fire that no coma could extinguish. Michael Carter stood in the wings, his work-worn hands clasped, his heart swelling as he watched his daughter prepare to sing. The crowd, kids from the neighborhood, parents, volunteers, even a few reporters, filled the folding chairs, their faces lit with expectation. White and Mary Thompson, now a full-time coordinator for Dawn Song, adjusted a banner that read, "Where silence ends, healing begins." The mural Sophie had painted, a barefoot boy offering a star, glowed on the wall behind her. Its blue letters bold. He didn't need wings. He had faith. Michael's gaze lingered on it, his mind drifting to Noah, the boy who'd slipped into their lives like a whisper and changed everything. Sophie took a deep breath, her voice small but clear. "This is for the boy who sang to me," she said, "and for my dad, who never stopped." The room hushed as she began Light in the Shadows, her notes wobbly but pure. "There's light in the shadows and stars in the rain." Michael's throat tightened, memories flooding back. Sophie's collapse, the hospital's cold despair, Noah's barefoot presence. The audience leaned forward, some wiping tears, others holding hands, as Sophie's voice grew stronger. "Hold on, little dreamer, you'll fly once again." As she finished, Michael's eyes caught a figure in the back row, a boy, barefoot, in a frayed hoodie, his smile soft as sunlight. Their gazes met, and Michael's heart skipped. Noah. He blinked, and the boy was gone, leaving only a ripple of warmth, like a note lingering in the air. Michael didn't chase him this time. He knew Noah was out there, somewhere, carrying stars for someone else. After the performance, Michael and Sophie sat in the center's art room, surrounded by children's drawings and half-finished canvases. Sophie clutched her stuffed giraffe, her eyes on the moon outside the window. "Daddy," she said, "do you think Noah's helping someone else tonight?" Michael brushed a curl from her face, his voice steady. "I do, baby girl, and we're helping too with this place." He gestured to the walls, covered in stories and songs from kids who'd found their voices here. Dawn's song had grown beyond their dreams, serving hundreds of children from the city's forgotten corners. Kids like Noah, who'd once waited alone. The YouTube channel, Noah's Echo, had reached millions. Its videos of Sophie's drawings and Michael's songs sparking messages from around the world. A mother in a hospice, a teenager in foster care, a soldier far from home, all saying, "I thought I was lost, but I'm not finished yet." Michael opened his notebook, now filled with new stories and prayers, and read one to Sophie about a girl who danced with the moon. She smiled, her eyes heavy but bright. "We're teaching the world to sing," she said, echoing her vow from months ago. Michael hugged her close, knowing this was their legacy, not just Sophie's survival, but the light they'd shared with others. This story is more than a tale of a girl waking from a coma. It's a testament to the power of love, faith, and the human spirit. At its core, Sophie and Michael's journey reminds us that healing often comes not from machines or money, but from the raw, honest connections we forge through stories, songs, or a hand held in the dark. Noah, whether a boy, a symbol, or something divine, embodies the idea that hope can come from the most unexpected places, often from those society overlooks. Michael's transformation from a grieving father buried in work to one who rediscovers. His voice teaches us that redemption lies in facing our pain and choosing to love despite it. Sophie's resilience, her drawings, her song, show that even the smallest among us can carry immense strength. The story's humanism lies in its call to see each other, to listen, to sing for those who are lost. It challenges us to build spaces like Dawn's song, where every child's voice matters, and to carry Noah's echo into our own lives. Let this be a lesson. Never let silence win. Tell your stories, sing your songs, and hold fast to those you love, because sometimes the miracle is in the act of trying. For more stories that inspire and heal, subscribe to Legacy Stories on YouTube. Join us to discover tales of hope, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit. And let's keep teaching the world to sing. The moon hung low that night, a quiet witness to Sophie's steady breaths as she slept. Michael sat by her bed, his notebook open, writing a new story about a boy with no shoes who carried stars. He didn't know where Noah was, but he felt him in the laughter at Dawn's song, in the messages on Noah's echo, in the light that had returned to Sophie's eyes. Miracles, he realized, weren't thunder or lightning. They were dirt under nails, a song in the dark, a girl's hand reaching through the shadows, and a father who'd learned to believe again.